doing what they can to sober Dr. Duncan up, if indeed he is to go to the hospital
Barely.
to perform life-saving surgery on T. Howard Pines Jr.,
I can't walk any further.
the hospital administrator.
I think it's farther, Dr. Duncan.
It is
because we're
farther,
talking about
Mrs. Hoyser.
distance.
Distance is
Thank
farther.
you, Hampshire.
That's all right. Wait, what is this?
Phone's ringing, Mr. Hoyser. You get the phone. I'll keep walking, Dr. Duncan.
The phone ringing there in the Hoyser house of antiques.
Barely. Hello. What? All right. Thank you very much.
Who was that who called?
It was Adam O'Rear calling from the hospital.
Adam O'Rear, of course, is the nurse at the
Oh, I
hospital.
can't walk any further.
And what was it that
Farther.
Adam O'Rear had to say?
Adam said that it doesn't look good for Howard.
It doesn't look good for Howard.
I think I'm getting sober.
On the other hand, Dr. Duncan seems to be sobering up.
Yes, that's enough walking.
And so it could be
No more coffee.
that it will look good for Howard if Dr. Duncan can get to the hospital in time.
All right, thank you very much, Hoysers. I do appreciate it. I'll just walk over to the hospital now and do the best I can for my very best friend, Howard.
And so, Dr. Duncan leaves the Hoyser house of antiques, starts walking down the street of Pine City, musing to himself as he strolls.
It's a tough situation I find myself in. I do feel responsible for the death of Widow Rachel, and I carry this enormous sense of guilt. But after all, I am one of America's leading medical minds, and my help is desperately needed now to save the life of my best friend Howard, and I know I can do it. Oh, there's the Blue Front Club. Maybe I'll just stop in and have one quick drink.
Well, Dr. Duncan's senses seem to have returned, appreciating the gravity of the situation as it regards T. Howard Pines Jr., for whom it does not look good. And perhaps Dr. Duncan does need a drink to steady his nerves. Oh, yes. Join us next time when we'll hear Dr. Duncan say,
It's 2:45. There's no one in the place except you and me. So stick 'em up, Joe. That was just a little joke, Joe.
please. I see you have your hand poised over the massive keyboard.
Yes, I do.
Are you ready?
Yes.
And now, Light of My Life. Light of my life. The true-to-life story of men and women living their span of years in Pine City. A typical small Midwestern community. Well, you'll recall that Dr. Duncan has turned to drink because of the death of the widow Rachel.
Set him up, Joe. I've got a little story that you ought to know.
News came that T. Howard Pines Jr., hospital administrator and Dr. Duncan's best friend,
Nathan Begora.
fell down an elevator shaft.
T. Howard Pines has fallen down an elevator shaft.
Dr. Duncan, the only man who could save Howard. And so, Mr. and Mrs. Hoyser sobered Dr. Duncan up so that he might go to the hospital and perform the life-saving operation.
Have some more coffee, Dr. Duncan.
It worked. Dr. Duncan left the Hoyser House of Antiques and headed toward the Pine City Hospital. However,
I think I'll just stop at the Blue Front Club and have one little drink.
that one little drink turned into 2, 3, 4, and more drinks. Until now, we find Dr.
It
Duncan
was 17. as a
totally
matter of fact.
polluted.
Well, it's time for me to operate on Howard.
And so Dr. Duncan approaches the operating room in the Pine City Hospital,
Look at the condition of Dr. Duncan.
and there, outside the operating room, are Mr. and Mrs. Hoyser.
Howard doesn't have a prayer.
Dr. Duncan enters the operating room,
Okay.
where he is to be assisted in the operation by Nurse Adam O'Rear.
Did you wash up, Doctor? Well, now I'll just wipe my hands on my shirt here. And, Oh, what a horrible accident Howard has been in. Why, he doesn't even look like himself. You're looking at me, Dr. Duncan.
Oh, gosh, the poor doctor.
Well, let's see what's wrong with
In no condition to operate.
Bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee. Scalpel, if you would, Adam. Scalpel. Oops. I dropped it. I'll just wipe it off on my shirt. I see. What's that next thing that I usually ask for, Adam? A suture, Dr. Duncan. Give me one of those, whatever they are. Oh, there's a kind of hush. Boy, he's in bad shape here. All over the world tonight. All over the world. Give me some, what would you like to get? How about some forceps? Forceps, Dr. Duncan.
Poor Howard. Poor Howard. He doesn't have a prayer.
And so, Adam O'Rear muses to himself about that pathetic figure lying on the operating table at the hands of a drunken Dr. Duncan, T. Howard Pines, Jr., who doesn't have a prayer. Be sure to join us tomorrow when we'll hear Mrs. Hoyser ask,
Does Howard have a prayer?
of my life. Light of my life. The true-to-life story of men and women living their span of years in Pine City, a typical small Midwestern granite community. Well, it's a drunken Dr. Duncan who is operating on his best friend,
Poor the pirate sheriff.
T. Howard Pines,
Whoops,
Jr.,
I dropped it.
hospital administrator.
Drop my scalpel.
Dr. Duncan is drunken because of his remorse over the loss of the widow Rachel.
Oh, poor Howard. He doesn't have a prayer.
Adam O'Rear, nurse, is assisting in the operation, and it is his considered opinion that because of Dr. Duncan's condition, Howard doesn't have a prayer.
Verily I say unto thee, Mrs. Hoyser, as we wait, it's forget it time. Howard doesn't have a prayer.
That seems to be the consensus of opinion around the Pine City Hospital. But now, after having labored some hours over Howard, Dr. Duncan begins to sober up
Wait a minute. What am I doing?
and thinks to himself,
Where am I? Where I seem to be? Good grief, I'm in the operating room. Nurse Adam and I seem to be operating on someone. Who is it, I wonder? Anybody I know? Oh, why have I let myself become this drunken sot? No need to ask. I know the answer so well. It's because I made that mistake while operating on the widow Rachel that cost her her life.
well,
Oh, wait a minute. There's hope. I am, after all, one of medicine's great minds. And I can rally myself to operate on this man, whoever he is.
it's T. Howard Pines, Jr.
Who are we operating on, Adam?
Tell him, Adam, who it is.
It's T. Howard Pines, your best friend, and he doesn't have a prayer.
Adam's right. He doesn't unless I can pull myself together and do the necessary cutting, showing, and things like that.
Furthermore, Dr. Duncan must try to remember what it was that he did during the widow Rachel operation that cost her her life so that he does not repeat the mistake on Howard.
Try to remember that time in December. Wait a minute, it all comes back to me. I know what I did wrong when I operated on widow Rachel. I severed all the nerves to her nose. No wonder she couldn't breathe.
Of course, that's the reason that she stopped breathing. The nerve to her nose was severed.
Look what I've done. I've repeated the error. I've severed all the nerves to Howard's nose.
Dr. Duncan, Howard stopped breathing.
Oh, no. Not another fatal mistake by one of America's most gifted medical minds, Dr. Duncan. But indeed, Howard has stopped breathing. Could it be that Dr. Duncan has indeed repeated the same mistake made on the widow Rachel? Be sure to join us tomorrow when we'll hear Mrs. Heuser say,
Does Howard have a prayer yet?
to adjust the stops on the massive KFI in-house organ, and if he does it while Bruce is reporting, to Bruce it sounds like an engine is cutting out.
Yeah.
And throws a bit of a start into our traffic reporter.
Okay, fellas, I'm all set.
Okay, it's 23 minutes after 8 at KFI. And now, Light of My Life. Light of My Life, the true-to-life story of men and women living their span of years in Pine City. Pine City, a typical, small, Midwestern community.
Rock on it.
As you'll recall, the recollection of Dr. Duncan's operation on the widow Rachel is very much on his mind because during the course of that operation, he lost the love of his life, the widow Rachel.
I must have made an error in my operation. What could it have been? Sorry.
Now today...
Simple line, I blew it.
Now today, he is operating on T. Howard Pines, Jr., when suddenly Adam O'Rear, the nurse, says...
Howard has stopped breathing.
Well, that's exactly what happened to the widow Rachel.
I must have made the same mistake on Howard as I made on the widow Rachel.
And so,
I severed the nerves to his nose.
the nerves to his nose severed. That's what caused the demise of the widow Rachel, and now threatens to take the life of Dr. Duncan's best friend, Howard.
Quick, Adam. We must do everything we can medically to save Howard's life. We've got to reunite those nerve endings that lead to Howard's nose so that he can breathe again.
And so Dr. Duncan quickly calls for the scalpel.
Scalpel.
He quickly calls
Clamps.
for the clamps.
Clamps. Forceps. Forceps. What's that looking? What terrible looking thing? That there's a sponge. I gave you the wrong thing. Here's your forceps. Now sponge. A sponge. Shoot yourself. I always like that little joke, shoot yourself. Just give me the shooter, Adam. Scalpel again. Clamps. Forceps. Sponge. Shooter again.
So
More
hour
shooter.
after
And
hour,
more
Dr.
shooter.
Duncan and Adam O'Rear
Scalpel, clamps, forceps.
labor over Dr. Duncan, trying to restore those nerves that lead to his nose.
Doggone. It isn't going to work. I cannot reunite the nerve endings to Howard's nose.
Well, what are they to do?
What are you going to do, Dr. Duncan?
Suddenly, Dr. Duncan has an idea.
I've got it. We'll wake up Howard and tell him to breathe through his mouth. Howard.
So they begin slapping Howard alongside the face in hopes of reviving him to tell him if he wants to live, he'll have to breathe through his mouth.
Wake up, Howard. Why, hello, Dr. Duncan. How are you? I'm fine, but you're going to have to breathe through your mouth. He's saved, Dr. Duncan. A brilliant medical stroke. You've saved T. Howard Pines, Jr.
Oh, if only Dr. Duncan had realized at the time he was operating on the widow Rachel and had severed the nerves to her nose, that had he revived her in time and told her to breathe through her mouth, she would be with him today. But at least he has saved the life of his best friend, T. Howard Pines, Jr. Be sure to join us tomorrow when we'll hear Dr. Duncan say...
There will be one little problem, Howard. You'll snore a lot at night.
Of my life. Light light of my life. The true-to-life story of men and women living their span of years in Pine City, a typical small Midwestern community. Well, today, thankfully, T. Howard Pines Jr., hospital administrator, is recuperating in his own hospital, following surgery performed by his friend Dr. Duncan. Howard, of course, as you'll recall, was saved when Dr. Duncan realized that he,
You're looking good.
in the operation, had severed the nerves to Howard's nose, and Howard had stopped breathing.
You, look like you're making fine recovery from your operation, Howard. How do you feel?
Well, I feel fine, Dr. Duncan.
Except, of course, that Howard now must breathe through his mouth.
Because of you, though, Dr. Duncan, I have to breathe through my mouth. And as a result, I get a lot of sore throats.
Oh, quit complaining, Howard.
Dr. Duncan, of course, continues to feel remorse over the loss of his love, the widow Rachel.
You got a better break than the widow Rachel. Oh, widow Rachel, widow Rachel, widow Rachel.
Howard has news for Dr. Duncan.
You look as if you're anticipating something, Howard.
Oh, yes, I am. As a matter of fact, I'm expecting a visit from my sister today.
Your sister?
Howard's sister?
Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk.
Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk.
She is married to Lord Elton Loudermilk, a third-generation magnate and heir to the Loudermilk whale oil fortune.
I don't think I've ever met her.
Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk is due to visit her recuperating brother, T.
Yes.
Howard Pines Jr.
She lives in London. The Loudermilk Limited is a London organization. She had to fly here, and she's due any moment now. She had to take the bus from Omaha.
Well, I'm happy for you, Howard, but as for me, I'll live a life of sadness because there is no more Widow Rachel. Oh, Widow Rachel, Widow Rachel, Widow Rachel.
Suddenly, a rapping on T. Howard Pines Jr.'s hospital door.
Come in. Why, hello, sis.
Hello, Howard. How are you? And who's that handsome man with you?
Well, so that is Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk, Howard's sister, married to Lord Elton Loudermilk, third-generation magnate and heir to the Loudermilk whale oil fortune. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I think I'm in love.
Well, here is T. Howard Pines Jr., breathing through his mouth. And here is his sister, Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk. A beautiful woman, and she has captured Dr. Duncan's heart. Be sure to join us tomorrow when we'll hear Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk think.
Why, Dr. Duncan is the most handsome man I've ever met. I think I'm in love.
8 o'clock this morning at KFI. It's time for Light of My Life. Light of My Life. The true-to-life story of men and women living their span of years in Pine City, a typical small Midwestern community. A newcomer to Pine City in the person of Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk, sister of T. Howard Pines Jr., Pine City Hospital Administrator. Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk is the wife of Lord Elton Loudermilk, third-generation magnate and heir to the Loudermilk whale oil fortune.
You look very nice, birthday, Howard.
She has come to visit Howard, who is recuperating
Thank
from
you, sis.
the surgery performed on Howard by his close friend,
Boy, she's a beautiful woman.
Dr. Duncan, who has been taken by the looks of Dame Edith.
One thing, though, Howard, you look dumb with your mouth open.
Howard explained.
Well, it's not my fault. Dr. Duncan screwed up and severed all the nerve endings to my nose. I can only breathe now, sis, through my mouth. Dame Edith.
Dr. Duncan.
If you don't mind, how about you and I going to the Posh Blue Front Club for a little pick-me-up? Well, that sounds like a nice idea.
Well, Dr. Duncan and Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk off for a pick-me-up at the famed Blue Front Club.
I think you'll like this place, Dame Edith. Oh, it's lovely. They've got a new band. I think you'll have a chance to meet some of my friends, too. I noticed sitting over there is Mr. Hoyser, who runs the Hoyser House of Antiques with his wife. Let's walk on over. All right. I seem to have a pebble in my shoe. Just a moment, Dame Edith. There we go. All right.
Darling, I say unto thee, Dr. Duncan, that's a good-looking broad you're with.
You can't say that to Dame Edith. Take that.
Why, Dr. Duncan, you just cold-cocked Mr. Hoyser.
Quite sure enough. What appeared to be a nice social evening for Dr. Duncan and Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk has been spoiled by the appearance of Mr. Hoyser. A somewhat derogatory remark about the lady in Dr. Duncan's presence. Be sure to join us next time when we'll hear Mr. Hoyser say, "Organ Phil, hold it there just a second."
Never mind.
Forget it.
Want to do a spot, Hank? 26 past 8 now at KFI.
When we last left Bob and Terry, they were thinking about going out to dinner.
Men and women living their span of years in Pine City, a typical small Midwestern community. Well, as you'll recall, Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk is in Pine City, there to visit her brother, T. Howard Pines, Jr., who is recuperating from surgery in the Pine City Hospital. Dame Edith and Dr. Duncan are now at the Posh Blue Front Club, where they are engaged in some social intercourse.
Dr. Duncan, you did something very unusual when we came into the Blue Front Club, and that is that you cold-cocked your dear friend, Mr. Hoyser. Why'd you do that? Well, he said an insulting thing about you, Dame Edith, and I might as well confess, and I know this sounds strange, we've only known each other for but a scant hour, but I'm quite taken with you, Dame Edith. I believe I've lost my heart to you. Of course, you can probably never see anything in me because you're married to wealthy Lord Elton Loudermilk, third-generation magnate and heir to the Loudermilk whale oil fortune. Not so fast, Dr. Duncan. It just turns out that Lord Elton is broke. Good heavens, how could that be, Dame Edith? Well, the whale oil business is bad. For one thing, whales don't seem to be so oily anymore. And another thing, there's been a marked decline of the use of whale oil lamps. So I'd be very happy to remarry someone else, but he must have money. I guess that lets me out, Dame Edith. I have very little money.
Wait. I just thought of something. When the widow Rachel died, she left her fortune to my shovel. If something should happen to that shovel, I would inherit the money and be very well-to-do.
Could it be that Dr. Duncan, in order to get the love of Dame Edith, would actually plot to do in his own shovel, which, as you know, now lives in the nicest home in Pine City? Be sure to join us next time when we'll hear Dr. Duncan say...
Would you excuse me just a moment, Dame Edith? I've got a little something I must do. I'm off to see a shovel.
All set to go, fellas.
23 minutes after 8 is the time in Los Angeles. It's time for Light of My Life. Light of My Life. The true-to-life story of men and women living their span of years in Pine City, a typical small Midwestern community where so many things have happened of late in the life of Dr. Duncan that he is having to sort it all out in his mind. First, as you'll recall, he lost the love of his life, the widow Rachel. Then, nearly lost his best friend, T. Howard Pines, Jr., whose sister, Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk, arrived in Pine City to visit her brother. Dr. Duncan was quite taken by Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk and found out in the course of a social evening that Dame Edith does not have the money that he thought she had.
Got it.
In fact, she has indicated that she might find her love Dr. Duncan if he himself were suddenly to become wealthy.
But that's impossible. Because Dame Edith, is used to the wealth of Lord Elton Loudermilk, third-generation magnate and heir to the Loudermilk whale oil fortune. But now, for some reason, whales don't seem to be as oily, and hardly anyone is using a whale oil lamp. Therefore, he doesn't have money. If I could come into money, then perhaps I could win the love of Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk.
Suddenly, as he sorts these things out in his mind, he recalls that the widow Rachel was well endowed.
Yeah, not only that, but she had a lot of money, too.
She left her estate, her fortune, to Dr. Duncan's shovel.
Yes, and the shovel now, lives at relative ease in the Leffingwell estate on Elm Street. Perhaps I'll go in
and making himself eligible to receive the money from the widow Rachel estate.
I'll make up a story. I'll say that one time in 1968, I gave the shovel a ride into town from the desert and lent it a quarter.
Well, Dr. Duncan now, as night has fallen on Pine City, approaches the Leffingwell mansion and peeks in the window.
Ah, yes, there it is, the shovel. Just sitting there, watching television.
Dr. Duncan stealthily approaches the front door of the Leffingwell mansion, opens same, walks into the foyer, and tippy-toes into the family room, where he grasps the shovel from behind.
And now, to Farmer Brown's house, and I'll bury this thing.
He'll bury the shovel at Farmer Brown's back 40. Dr. Duncan has a plan now to suddenly become wealthy as he gets the estate of the late widow Rachel once he has disposed of the shovel. Be sure to join us next time when we'll hear
There, that's deep enough.
Light of my life. Light of my life, with special guest star Arthur Godfrey. The true-to-life story of men and women living their span of years in Pine City, a typical small Midwestern community. Well, Dr. Duncan faces a dilemma. If he is to gain the love of Dame Edith Pines Loudermilk, T. Howard Pines Jr.'s sister, he must come in to money. And so he has decided that the quick way to do that is to dispose of the widow Rachel's shovel. A shovel which the widow Rachel, upon her demise, left with quite a fortune. And so today, or tonight, we find Dr. out from Brown's farm, where he is digging a hole into which he will throw the shovel, and then he will become eligible for the shovel's money.
Yes, I'll make up... It's a despicable thing that I'm doing, but I'm desperate. I'll make up a story. I'll make up a false will and drop it off at the Mormon Tabernacle. That will claim that all the shovel's money goes to me.
And so Dr. Duncan continues digging away in the night.
I think it's about deep enough. Now I'll just throw the shovel down into this deep hole, and I'll cover up the hole. Wait a minute. How can I cover up the hole? The shovel's down in the bottom. I have no second shovel. And doggone it, I can't bury the shovel. I'll have to think of some other way to get rid of it. I'll just jump down into the hole and get the shovel back. Well, I sure dug this thing deep. Now, where's your shovel? It must be over here somewhere. All right, I'll just throw it up onto the ground there.
And so the shovel now is atop the ground. Dr. Duncan is in the hole.
Hello.
When suddenly...
How are you? Who's out there?
Farmer Brown approaching.
Uh-oh. That's Farmer Brown. Farmer Brown usually carries his shotgun. If he should see me in the dark, he's liable to think I'm an intruder and shoot me.
And so Dr. Duncan hides in the hole as Farmer Brown approaches and sees the open excavation in his field.
Hello. What's this? Somebody has dug a hole on my farm, and they left the shovel here on top of the ground. Well, I'll just take the shovel, and I'll fill in the hole. There, 2 more shovels full, and I should have this hole filled. What a terrible spot I'm in. If I shoot this hole, Farmer Brown will bury me alive. But if I call out for help, he's liable to shoot me with a shotgun.
Indeed for Dr. Duncan, as he hides in the hole which is being filled in by Farmer Brown. Be sure to join us tomorrow when we'll hear Farmer Brown say,
Well. That should do it. The hole is filled. I sure hope there was nobody in the hole.
Phil?
Yeah, just a moment, fellas.
Okay.
Go. Okay, one more.
Okay, Bill. And now, Light of My Life. Light of My Life with special guest star Arthur Godfrey. The true-to-life story of men and women living their span of years in Pine City. A typical small Midwestern community. Today, in the Heuser house of events of the past few days.
Mrs. Heuser, you look concerned. What seems to be the matter? Well, Mr. Heuser, it's about Dr. Duncan. I'm very worried about the good doctor. You see, he's fallen in love with Dame Edith Pine's Loudermilk. And before he can marry Dame Edith, he has to get a lot of money. And the only place he could possibly get it would be from the widow Rachel's estate. But she gave all her money to Dr. Duncan's shovel. Therefore, I'm worried that Dr. Duncan might do something to the shovel.
Well, Mrs. Heuser's concerns are well-founded. For at this very moment, Dr. Duncan has indeed plotted to do in the shovel, and then to get the shovel's money. Dr. Duncan went to Farmer Brown's field, dug a hole, threw the shovel in, then realized that he had nothing to cover the shovel up with. And so he jumped into the hole, threw the shovel back on top of the ground, when suddenly Farmer Brown appeared.
Hello, who's over there?
Farmer Brown, armed with a shotgun, was on the scene, and so Dr. Duncan hid in the hole.
I'd better take this shovel and fill in the hole.
Well, now, Farmer Brown is in the final stages of filling in the hole which he found on his farm, and unbeknownst to him, a hole in which is hiding Dr. Duncan.
Well. There, I'm all through with filling in the hole. Now I think I'll go to my house and get some sleep.
And so, Farmer Brown falls asleep. Suddenly, begins to dream unpleasant dreams.
Oh, what a terrible, terrible dream I had. I dreamt that there was somebody in the hole that I filled in. You don't suppose there might really have been? It does seem strange. There was this open hole, and there was no one around. Perhaps I'd better go back and check just to make sure. But before I do, I think I'll fix myself a nice leisurely breakfast.
Will Farmer Brown arrive in time to dig Dr. Duncan out of the hole? For the good doctor has indeed been buried alive. Be sure to join us next time when we'll hear Farmer Brown say,
Oh boy, that bacon looks good. Now let me see, do I want 2 or 3 eggs?
And now, Light of My Life. Light of My Life, with special guest star, Arthur Godfrey. The true-to-life story of men and women living their span of years in Pine City, a typical small Midwestern community. Where on the outskirts of Pine City, Farmer Brown found a hole on his farm, which he filled in. Unbeknownst to Farmer Brown, Dr. Duncan was hiding in that hole. Having filled in the hole, Farmer Brown returned to his home and went to bed. When, during the course of the night, his sleep was interrupted as he began to feel concerned about that hole and whether or not someone might have been in it. And so he hastened from his bed, determined to go back and redig the hole. But before doing that, he decided on having himself a nice breakfast.
Oh boy, is this a good breakfast. Oh, the bacon was just fine, and those eggs were cooked just right. Did you know that eggs are the highest single source of cholesterol in the daily diets? Well, I'd better get my shovel, the one I found out in my farm, and go dig up the hole and see if anybody's there.
The shovel he found is a shovel that the widow Rachel had fallen in love with, and on her demise, a shovel which inherited her vast fortune, for the widow Rachel was well endowed.
Not only that, but she had a lot of money.
And so Farmer Brown, with the shovel, returns now to the site of the hole which he had filled in.
Where's that hole? It's right over here.
He locates the hole.
Nope, let me out of here. Nope. I'm buried alive. Let me out of here. I think I hear somebody. I'd better start digging fast. There must be somebody buried in that hole.
And so Farmer Brown begins digging as fast as he can in hopes of getting there in time to save the life of Dr. Duncan.
Let's see now. There does seem to be somebody there. Why, it's Dr. Duncan. Are you all right, Dr. Duncan? Yes, I'm all right, but I'm almost a goner. I need artificial respiration. What's artificial respiration? How do you do that, Dr. Duncan? Will you put... Wait. How do you do that? Yes. There. You put your mouth next to my mouth. I can't do that. People will think I'm a homosexual.
Well, is it that because of Farmer Brown's hang-ups, he will not do what's necessary to save the life of Dr. Duncan? Be sure to join us tomorrow when we'll hear Mrs. Heuser say...
Hello. Yes? Uh-huh. All right. Bye. How's Dr. Duncan? He wants me to come over and give him artificial respiration.
Here, Organ Phil.
Beg your pardon?
I say, are you ready, Organ Phil?
Couple stops
All right. 23 minutes past 8 at KFI.
here. All right, everything's set, fellas.
It's time for Light of My Life. Light of My Life. The true-to-life story of men and women living their span of years in Pine City, a typical small Midwestern community where Dr. Duncan's life has been saved by Farmer Brown. When Farmer Brown freed Dr. Duncan from a hole in which he had been buried alive.
I'll get there in just a moment.
Dr. Duncan,
I'll save you.
upon having been saved by Farmer Brown, decides that there is only one thing now necessary for his survival.
And Farmer Brown, you're going to have to give me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
However, Farmer Brown is reluctant to give Dr. Duncan mouth-to-mouth
Do
resuscitation.
that, Dr. Duncan. People will think I'm a homosexual.
And so, Dr. Duncan has a request, then, that he makes of Farmer Brown.
It's all right with you. Let's go up to your farmhouse, and I'll call somebody. Maybe they'll come out, one of my friends, and give me artificial respiration.
And so, Dr. Duncan and Farmer Brown make their way across the field in the dark of night toward Farmer Brown's farmhouse. They arrive at the front door and enter same. Dr. Duncan hastens to the telephone.
It's right over there. Okay, let's see. Who can I call? Oh, I know. I'll call Officer Mulder. He'll come out here and give me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Of course, he'd know how to do it, being a policeman. All right, it's ringing. Hello? Officer Mulder. Dr. Duncan here. I'm sorry to impose upon you, but would you come out to Farmer Brown's and give me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation? Oh, you're on your way to a bank robbery. No, that's all right. I certainly understand. Well, let's see now. Who else could I call? I'll call Mrs. Hoyser over at the Hoyser House of Antiques. I'm sure she'd be happy to do this for me.